man came for me. She's got crimson eyes, a screaming body. Her face is young, she must taste speed. She drops those pennies to her knees, walking on a happy home. She won't give up until I'm gone. I think I'm cursed. I had him first. Adeline had mercy.
Welcome to our third breakout session here at Rackspace Solve London, and here to talk about the evolution of cybercrime from Alert Logic, Intelligence Manager Martin Lee.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many people staying here for the full day and coming to this session. It's a great pleasure to be here. And what I'm going to talk to you crime, how cybercrime is evolving, how it has evolved, and also to start thinking about what it's going to mean for the future and how this is going to mean that we're going to have to change the way that we do security and things we're going to have to think about for the future. So I work within the ActiveIntelligence group of Alert Logic. We're a fairly unique proposition. Our team exists of data scientists bringing their particular view about how to analyze data and how to spot trends and spot patterns, combined with people such as myself, domain experts who are bringing security knowledge. So by bringing the two together, we're looking to deliver a data-driven security model based on monitoring and analyzing data of what's actually happening in real systems. In terms of cybercrime, what we look at is, well, we monitor the underground economy and look about how that works and what are the particular drivers that are affecting how cybercriminals operate. We monitor that and look for changes and little indicators that lead us to think how things might change or how things might evolve. And most importantly, we analyze our telemetry, which is coming from our customer systems, to identify active campaigns which are ongoing, and then we can engage with our Security Operations Center and with our customers, with our third parties, and indeed in events such as this, in order to talk about the types of things that we find. Now, over the years, a pattern has become apparent that fundamentally there are three types of threat actors, three classes of bad guys that are out there. There's the pure cyber criminal who's out to make money. They do this for a living, and it's a very lucrative living, and they make a lot of money out of it. There's also the hacktivist that has a very different point of view. They're in it more to make a point, to try and score points against someone or for themselves, or indeed to spread some kind of message or political message or propaganda. They're not in it for money. And then we have a third group, which we hear an awful lot about in the press, APTs, the Advanced Persistent Threats. These are threat actors that have enough funding and enough money that they can take their time in launching attacks, and that they can identify exactly who it is that they want to go after and put the time and the effort and the investment into making sure that attack actually succeeds. Now, we've got the overlap between the groups, and sometimes it's clear that an individual might start learning their trade in hacktivism and then become a cyber criminal and evolve their career that way. There's certainly evidence that some cyber criminals are working perhaps towards a privateer model with some kind of state sponsorship or state protection under the APTs. And although we talk about APTs as potentially being state-sponsored, an APT could also be a well-funded cyber criminal organization which is able to take a longer-term views on their actions rather than just going for a mass market model. If we start by looking at criminal actors, well, the thing that really characterizes the cybercrime model is it's a mass market model. They're going after as many victims as they possibly can. It's nothing specific to you. They don't really mind who they compromise. They just want to compromise as many people as possible. And this may be through the distribution of malware attached to emails, just spammed out without regard to the recipient. Or indeed, it may be through subverting the ad network on websites. And so if a user visits a website to get malware on their machine, Because once that malware is on a machine, a key thing that I'd like you to remember is malware on a device means that device no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the person who's written the malware. And they can do whatever they want with that device, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your phone, whether it's your cloud server. And the cyber criminals have put together a whole range of business models to make money from the machines which they compromise. So one of the examples I like to talk about in a little bit more detail is mal-advertising, which is a system whereby we can subvert the web ad business to serve up malware. So whenever you go and visit a web page, you're no longer just getting that particular web page. And the best analogy I've heard, it's like inviting J-Lo into your front room. You don't just get Jennifer Lopez turning up, you get a whole range of hangers-on. You get the PR advisor, you get the makeup advisor, you get the hairstylist. You get a whole range of people coming with this one individual that you've actually invited. And it's exactly the same thing when you go to a website. Websites these days have all sorts of stuff which inserts into the web page. So you're going to get adverts, you're going to get trackers, you're going to get adverts which have been resold by a reseller and resold further. And in fact, whenever you visit a website, you're never going to be entirely clear or sure what pieces of code are going to be sucked in with that HTML into your browser. So for the bad guys, this is an absolute gift, because they can subvert the web advertising business to select and specify the type of business that they're looking after or the type of profile of user that they're after, hire an ad, or indeed, why not subvert and hack into an ad system. And so whenever anyone goes to a website, we get the malicious advert as well, which can forward you on to an exploit kit server, which is something that we've seen evolving and coming to life over these past few years. And the exploit kits are very, very clever. They'll profile your browser and see whether you're vulnerable for a particular exploit. If not, never mind, let's try another one, and then another one, and then another one, until we find that one particular patch of software, that one particular plugin that you haven't got up to date, but which the exploit server has an exploit for. And at that point, bad guys can launch the exploit, compromise your browser, upload that malware, and then that machine belongs to them. And then once they've got that malware on the machine, then they can look at a way of monetizing it. And one of the things that we've seen evolve over the past few years are these underground markets, whereby the specialist bad guys who are maybe writing the malware or distributing the malware can then monetize that investment and look at other ways of what can they get from your machine and sell it on to third parties, to other criminals who are specialized in other forms of making money. So we get things such as this. We get all sorts of login credentials which are being sold onto specialized criminals that are specialized in making money from this. And of course, the guy who is selling this, they're the ones making that level of money, but you can be certain that the next tier on, because they're specialists, they're able to get more money from that, and so on and so on. And within these underground markets, not only do we see these specialized credentials being sold, but we also see adverts for malware itself, and indeed adverts for exploit kits, adverts for botnets, whatever you like. And this is something which is slowly evolving and growing in time. And in fact, what we're seeing really is the industrialization of cybercrime and growing a business model and a thriving market which monitors our current economy and makes it more efficient and, most importantly, more profitable to undertake these criminal activities. If we look at hacktivist actors, hacktivists started off as being relatively simple, of just trying to subvert social media sites and getting their particular messages out. But over the years, we started to see a little bit more sophistication. And this particular hack, I think, is really very, very significant. Happened a couple of years ago now. And the bad guys managed to compromise the Associated Press Twitter feed, put out a malicious tweet. Okay, why not? It's a great way of getting your message out. But look at the damage that it caused. This one tweet caused $136 billion in market capitalization over the markets. Now, if your business or whatever, whatever idea you're looking to promote is actually in doing some kind of harm or some kind of malice to a market, this is an incredibly, incredibly effective way of causing damage to your particular target. And a very, very good example of how this is moving happened just a couple of months ago, where ISIS took out the French TV channel TV5 Monde and took 11 TV channels off air for 3 hours. What's more, they subverted the Facebook page and the website of the affected TV channel and changed them to promote pro-ISIS propaganda. What we have is evidence that this attack was particularly well planned and that the attackers were actually on the servers of the channel for about a week before it happened. Planning everything so that when they launched the attack, not only do they take the TV channels out, not only do they subvert the web pages, but they also take out the email server, which means it's more difficult to coordinate the response. So this is a very, very well thought out attack. Whilst it's certainly a hacktivist style attack, it also has elements of APT, of a lot of thought, a lot of planning, and a lot of targeting going into the particular attack. And when we talk about the advanced persistent threat, typically what we see is an attacker going after a specific target that they've researched. And typically they know what it is that they want to get from that particular target. Often, the attacks involve bespoke malware, which is being written for a single attack. That makes detecting it all the more difficult because it's never going to end up in your honeypots. You're never going to see it on someone's laptop. You're almost certainly not going to pick it up with signature-based detection. If it's a one-shot piece of malware specifically written for one particular attack, it becomes very, very difficult to detect. Often, we see exfiltration of information. Documents being stolen and just hoovered up by the attacker. Anything that they can get their hands on, anything which describes your procedures, your products, your marketing plans, your databases, or indeed the CAD, computer-aided design files, which can be used and sold on to unscrupulous low-cost competition to make copies of your particular products. Behind all of this, there is often the suspicion that there is some kind of political patronage. Sometimes it's clearer than others. Sometimes it appears pretty clear that it's actually been launched by a nation state in order to conduct some form of espionage or economic espionage. Sometimes it's clearly a criminal group, and sometimes it's kind of vague, and there's a suspicion that there may be some kind of patronage behind it or some kind of protection of a cyber criminal group that's being directed to perform a specific operation. A very good example of a criminal APT attack is the recent attack against Target supermarket in the US. A very, very well thought out plan that resulted in the financial data of 70 million customers being stolen. Absolute bonanza for a bad guy. Even if you're just making, maybe 10 cents out of each of that stolen information, there is still an awful lot of money and an awful lot of profit for that kind of attack. The attack itself is actually very well characterized. There's been a lot of information published about it. And it has a lot of elements that have been common to other APT-style attacks. In this particular attack, the bad guy sent out a phishing email to the air conditioning contractor. Now, the air conditioning contractor fell for the spearfish attack and got malware put on his device. The bad guys then used that malware to discover the air conditioning contractor's username and password to get onto the partner portal of the supermarket. Once on the partner portal, they looked and they searched and they found a logic flaw in the application. Once they found the logic flaw, that gives them a foothold on that device. Once on the device, they found a vulnerability that wasn't fully patched, which gives them full control of the device. Once they're on that, they can start spreading their attack throughout the organization, trying to map the networks, trying to find the other servers that are on it, finding the ones which again aren't fully patched, getting a toehold on them, and so forth, spreading throughout the organization, all the time feeding back command and control information back to the attacker until they find their way onto some sort of key system. In this case, it was the key system that connected to the point of sale, the tills. Once they're on that, they uploaded specific malware written for electronic tills, infected all the electronic tills, and then any time a credit card was added into it, it hoovered it up. Now, if you look on this model, there's actually a lot of places where the attack could have been stopped. Okay, maybe not this particular contractor at the end. Someone's going to fall for the phishing attack no matter what, no matter how good the training. But maybe we could have detected those attacks against the application layer on the partner portal and have detected these attacks, maybe an SQL injection attack. We could certainly have detected suspicious activity on the portal itself, and in the logs, maybe the malware being uploaded or installed, or abnormal activity. We could definitely, if we were looking and knew what to look for, have discovered the malware spreading within the network, and those reconnaissance attacks looking for the other machines. But nobody was looking, or nobody detected it. And certainly, you'd want to detect malware being installed on your point-of-sale systems. And even if you couldn't do that, surely, if you'd have been looking at your network logs and activity, you should be able to have detected 70 million credit cards going out your firewall, if you know what to look for, if you know what you're looking for. And the upshot of this, or the upshot of any APT attack, is we get something like this. This is the chief executive of Sony, and certainly I never ever want to have my chief executive looking like that and having to report the results of an APT attack. In this particular case, for this particular attack, they came in the house, they stole everything, they burned down the house, they destroyed servers, computers, wiped them clean of all the data and took all the data. Really a very, very devastating type of attack. Now, when we look into our own research and we start looking at the cloud environment, which is the particular area of interest, we start seeing some differences between cloud and on-premise. We certainly, in both environments, we see lots of application-level attacks. But in the on-premise, we see Trojan activity. If you've got users, you are obviously going to have users who are going to be clicking on websites, downloading malware without any fault of their own. But we don't see that in the cloud environment. We don't have users. We still see the same level of application attacks. We still see an awful lot of brute force attacks of people trying to guess usernames and passwords. But instead, we see much more reconnaissance activity of bad guys scanning the environment and looking to see what they can compromise. And we see an awful lot of what we class as suspicious activity, which is borderline things. It might be reconnaissance, it might be someone playing with the systems, it's something being turned on, it's something being turned off, but it's something happening which is important enough to raise it, and maybe, if you were managing that cloud environment, important enough to have a look at. Either one of your administrators is changing something, or potentially you've got an attacker who's compromised the environment. And when we look in a little bit more detail and look at the relative differences between the cloud environment and on-premise, we can see, certainly in the cloud, we have an awful lot less Trojan activity. This is very good. The stuff that we class as other, and certainly application attacks and brute force, is more or less the same between on-premise and cloud. When it comes to reconnaissance, we're seeing twice as much reconnaissance activity, malicious reconnaissance activity in the cloud environment than we do on-premise. We see 2.5 times as much suspicious activity. It could just be admins playing with your environment, or it could be things changing. Nevertheless, it's definitely something that you'd want to take a look at. And we see nearly 5 times as much denial of service attack activity. Potentially, there's 2 reasons for that. One, because a lot of cloud is public-facing. This may well give the bad guys a target to launch denial of service attacks against. Or potentially, in certain cloud providers, not all of them, if you're in a shared environment and one of your neighbors gets hit with a denial of service attack, that may well affect your performance as well. So not only you might be the target of denial of service attack, but if you're sharing infrastructure with other companies and they get touched with a denial of service attack, that may well affect you as well. Also, we see a whole range of different types of attacks going against different customers and different sectors. So often we think of cyber attacks. If we use that word, we tend to think about maybe sexy attacks going against defense contractors. In fact, everyone gets some kind of some kind of cyber attack, even right down to real estate. Estate agents, even estate agents are getting cyber activity. And because many estate agents have very rich, functional websites, they want it to look good for customers, they want to have lots of functionality on that, well, that's a prime target for the bad guys to actually go and probe and see if there's any logic errors that they can exploit. So they have a lot more application-level attacks going against them. And if we compare that with something such as transport and public utilities, there's less rich functionality for the bad guys to go after, but nevertheless, they'll compensate and have a lot more brute force attacks of trying to guess usernames and passwords and try and find their way in. So when we look at who's actually doing the attacks against our cloud honeypot systems, well, what we think we have is we have one very large threat actor based out of the Far East who's doing an awful lot of brute force guessing attacks against our honeypots. And then we have a whole range of other countries that are launching, that the attacks are coming from. And in fact, there isn't a country on the world that we don't see attacks coming out of. But when we profile the particular machines that are doing the attacks, we get something quite interesting. Normally, most attacks are coming out of botnets, which are networks of predominantly home PCs, very often, that have been infected with malware. When we look at the attacks which are coming against our cloud honeypot, the vast majority are actually coming out of Linux devices, which again suggests that instead of this being a botnet, and again the profile of the IP addresses that are attacking us, it suggests that actually we have someone who's put together a more complex infrastructure to launch attacks against us. Potentially, why not, a malicious cloud? So we have a malicious cloud attacking our own cloud honeypots. It's an interesting thought. When we look at what the attackers are actually doing, a lot of the attacks are just going against the SSH, looking for usernames and passwords, or going against Active Directory attacks, again, username and password attacks. But when we look further within the telemetry, we find that actually there's attacks going against just about any port you can think of. And no matter what you've got installed on your cloud system, someone is going to find it. Even if you think that it's not published, if you think that it's not available, someone will be looking for it, and it'll be someone who has an exploit for that. When we look at the usernames that the attackers are going after, the vast majority is root. Going through vast dictionary attacks, just trying to guess the root password. But we also have this whole other range of usernames that are being probed for. 9 times out of 10, it's the attacker looking for the default password. So if you've got software installed on your cloud environment and you've got a default username and password, someone will be looking for that. If you don't take it off or change it, someone is going to find it. And we've got some very esoteric stuff out there. We've got VoIP servers. We've got someone looking for Raspberry Pis out there. You name it, whatever the software is, there is somebody who knows what the default password is and is actively trying to do that and get into your systems. In some cases, we actually allow attackers to get into the system and then look at what they do. The first steps are usually to install malware, almost certainly so they can get further access onto the machine. A lot of these are droppers. So the biggest one, the Trojan agent, is a dropper that will just install further malware. But we've also got PSExec, which is actually a Windows tool. It's a legitimate piece of software. But of using that legitimate piece of software, actually, you can abuse it, and you can use it to take control of the machine. So you don't necessarily need malware to increase your access to a compromised machine. You can actually use it using Windows, legitimate pieces of Windows software. But rather scarily, we've got an awful lot of things which are being downloaded which are unknown. They're unknown executables. They're pieces of malware that actually the virus vendors don't yet recognize, which kind of suggests that a lot of our attackers in the cloud environment are using specific pieces of malware which are not being detected by traditional antivirus techniques, which is rather interesting. If we start thinking about, well, what does this mean for the future? And if we look at IT and how IT has changed over the last 5 years and project this forwards, I think there's certainly a few trends that we can identify. One is the fact that the perimeter is getting larger. We're installing more and more devices. We've got more devices moving to the cloud. We're getting more and more stuff to look for and to look after. And the types of things that we have to protect is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's also certain that the bad guys aren't getting any dumber. The bad guys are only increasing in sophistication. And one thing that we've identified as a big issue in the domain is that there's a shortage of professionals who have the skills, the necessary skills, in order to protect systems. And actually this, I think, is a big driver for adoption of the cloud, that it's a lot easier to have skilled sysadmins that are shared within a cloud environment looking after your systems than it is to try and hire these individuals and have them within your own departments. This is also another advantage for going for the managed services model for security, in that you don't have to hire your own security staff and your own security operations center. We can concentrate skilled individuals in one particular unit and share them out between companies. Yet at the same time, whilst in the industry we talk about there being a lack of skilled individuals, sometimes I do ask, well, we must be doing something wrong, because there is an awful lot of skill out there. This particular study caught my mind, or caught my eye. The One Laptop Per Child organization is a wonderful charity which takes electronic devices and puts them into remote communities who have never encountered electronic devices before, to try and see what they do and what they do with it and whether that can increase education. So they took an Android device and put it into a remote community in Ethiopia. Within 4 minutes, a child who had never seen an electronic device before had managed to open the box and turn it on. Absolutely wonderful. Within a few days, they'd installed apps and were using it. And 5 days on, we've got an average of 47 apps per child. They've worked out how to use the device. They're engaging with it. Absolutely brilliant. Within 2 weeks, we've increased literacy, and we've got children in the village singing ABC songs. Absolutely superb. We've managed to do what we wanted to do with this particular study. But within 5 months, the kids have actually discovered how to hack Android. The device was supplied with the camera disabled for privacy reasons, yet I think this is something innate within humanity. Given a device which is slightly crippled or an IT system that doesn't quite do what you want it to do, there is so much curiosity and so much drive to try and make it do something that these kids who 5 months earlier had not seen an electronic device had managed to hack it and make it do what they want it to do. And I think it's this drive to subvert things and learn about things and basically to mess with things, which means that once you have computer skills and you're combining this with some kind of incentive, which may be a criminal profit incentive, or it may be a malice and malicious incentive, or some sort of political goal scoring, or indeed the world of geopolitics and espionage, that these two things together mean we're always going to have cybercrime. It is never going to go away, and we're going to have to live with it, which is a kind of scary thought to have. This is not something that we're going to solve very easily at all, and indeed, I think we're never going to solve it, because computer skills and tinkering is something which is innate to humanity. Nevertheless, you do not need to be a victim. It's kind of frustrating. We know how to stop breaches. Number one thing is patching. getting rid of the vulnerabilities so that the bad guys can't exploit them. If you're not scanning for the vulnerabilities on your system, then you're not going to find them before the bad guys do. So number one, keep systems fully patched and scan for the vulnerabilities so that you find them early. Number two, monitor. Monitor your environment. Look for things which are wrong and which are out of place. That may well be network activity, unusual network activity. If you're not looking for it, you will never spot that exfiltration of data. Look in the logs. Look what's happening on your devices. In an ideal world, it should be much the same thing every day. If something changes, then you need to know about it. And that's the key thing. You need to be able to rapidly respond and identify when things are going wrong and take action. If you're not going to take action, then you're just leaving the bad guy to hoover up whatever they want or do whatever damage they want. And again, make sure that you've got a backup in place. Make sure you know what you would do if someone did get onto your systems and wipe them. Nevertheless, in 9 times out of 10, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be better than your competitor. If you're a more difficult target, the bad guy is more likely to go elsewhere. You do not need to be perfect. You just need to be doing a good enough job. So this is really what we do within Alert Logic. We work on monitoring systems, we work on monitoring networks, we work on monitoring logs, we work on scanning for vulnerabilities as a managed service so that we can look after the security so that you don't need to. We're here in the stand. If you'd like to come and talk to us about what it is that we do, please come along and say hello. Also, we have a lot of stuff that we put out on social media and a lot of reports that we write. So please look at these. Please download our reports, sign up to our webcast, and keep in touch with us over social media. And with that, I shall thank you very much indeed and open for questions. Well, I suppose that's good. You're just scared? No, it's nothing to be scared of, honestly. It's, I think security really strikes me as fundamentally it is quite easy. It's something which can be done. All you need to know is sort of how to do it, and then most importantly, monitor and look and look and look and look. And the problem is, I think a lot of organizations tend to stick their heads in the sand and not want to know about the problems. In the vast majority of cases, I think maybe the best example is Target, is when you actually look at what happened and the various steps that the bad guy had to go through in order to get for the jackpot. Each of those steps could have been detected if somebody was looking. And I think the problem is far too often people think that it is complicated, or it's too complicated for them to do, it's too difficult, it's too expensive for them to have their own security operations center, and it's that which leaves the door open for the bad guys to be able to get in. So, of course I'm going to say it because I work for Alert Logic, but I do genuinely believe it. This is why the managed service model is so good, because you can have a dedicated team of specialists monitoring your network 24/7, monitoring your systems 24/7, and then alerting you on the stuff which is actually important when stuff is going wrong and there's something that you need to look at. Because if you're not looking for it, you will never see it. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Is it a good idea or a bad idea? Should we keep our heads down and just do stuff, or should we be communicating well with our customers?
That's a very good question. My own personal belief is I think for far too long, security has been tainted with sort of secrecy. And there tends to be style of thinking within the security world that actually we should want to keep things secret because we want to protect ourselves and we want to not let on to the bad guys that were onto us or let any information go. I think when you look at any other kind of industry, that doesn't really work if you're trying to solve a problem. One of the best industries that I can think of that's actually got systems right is the aerospace industry. That any time that there is an incident or a near miss or something which nearly happened, there is a whole process which is launched off, an inquiry to look at what happened, and these are published. And the findings are published and what went wrong is published, and so that anyone who wants to look at what the problem is and how we can solve it actually has those steps laid out, and they can start learning lessons from incidents that other organizations have suffered about how they can go about fixing their security. So, or how they can think about fixing their systems. Now, if we take those same lessons and apply it to security, I honestly believe the best thing that we can do is talk about it. And the best thing that we can do is, one, to raise the profile of being able to say to other organizations, look, these things are happening, these things are real, you need to do something about it. Plus, this is what we encountered. So we've got some kind of case study that someone can take and can go to their systems or ask their security provider, what would you do in this case? How would you protect this? And also, as a security provider, we can look at other things that are going on and thinking, well, okay, well, we'd stop that there, we'd stop that there. Oh, maybe that bit, maybe we could do with a little bit of help. And of course, the other thing that we can get out through engaging with the community and sharing information is we can also pick up those indicators of compromise. So there's little snippets of information which give away something from the bad guy. And often when you can find a little something which describes the bad guy, you can then look at that further and find out more about them and find out more about the infrastructure that they're using, more about how they operate, so we can start identifying the infrastructure that they're setting up for the next attack. And so I only think it's through being public and through sharing information that we can actually hope to stay one step ahead of the bad guys. So yeah, I would thoroughly recommend talk about it. Don't let it get in the way of the incident response. Fix it first, but then engage with the wider community, talk about it, talk to the customer saying, this is the types of things that happen. This is the type of thing that is happening now. How do we resolve this? Or how would you fix it if it happened to you? Yeah, please.
Something you touched on in your presentation was threats coming through that are not yet detectable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Underway to try and improve that kind of protection. And it's quite surprising that after all these years, things are still coming through undetected.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show that the traditional ways of doing security through signatures are failing, because we can't keep up with the rate of innovation of the bad guys. Also, they have access to the traditional antivirus systems, so they can test their latest piece of malware on it to see if it's detected or not. If it is, we'll retrain the malware and refine it until they get a piece which is undetectable, and then they can launch it. So the signature-based type of way of doing security, in my mind, it's dead, and we have to look for something else. Fundamentally, I think that the solution we're going to find is going to be in data analysis. It's about spotting things that are wrong. And we're only going to spot things that are wrong by collecting lots of different pieces of data together and lots of telemetry, and then looking for those patterns and doing the data analysis and the statistical analysis so we can identify when something unusual happens. And at that point, we're still in a world where we're going to have to get an analyst to look at it. But with something such as, word macros, I mean, I remember we had word macro viruses, about 15 years ago, and then they went away. So all the detection went away too, because there weren't any word macro viruses in the wild. Then all of a sudden, I mean, you can almost imagine it. There's some bad guy somewhere has this bright idea one morning, hey, what if we used a 15-year-old technique? Wonder if that would work. And then all of a sudden it does, and it kicks off. But if you were looking at the frequency of attachment types coming through to your email, 15 years ago, you'd have seen loads of Word macros coming in, and then it would have tailed off, and then it would have been 0, and then all of a sudden you'd have seen a spike. And if you were following that, or if you had the software that was following that for you and could pick that up and then say, okay, we've had a change in the environment, all of a sudden we're seeing this happen, then you can get your guys, your analysts, or indeed the security community to look at it and say, aha, okay, there's something going on here. We're getting new pieces of malware using an old technique. Let's re-enable the types of detection that we have. But you can only do that if you're collecting the data and if you're analyzing it correctly. And I really think this is the right way to go, because the bad guys are able to change their techniques, change their malware to evade signature-based detection to their heart's desire. Yeah, please. Yeah, the insider threat is always an issue. So the question is what do you do if you've got someone malicious inside your organization? I think the trick is to be able to identify unusual behavior. So again, I think it comes back to looking through the logs, being able to identify what is normal and be able to distinguish that from what is abnormal. And someone acting maliciously within your organization, I would hope, would be an abnormal activity. And we should be able to detect something going on, such as unusual activity based on time, or unusual file access, or detect the exfiltration of data which is going on. And again, if you're looking at the telemetry in the right way, you can start to pick it up. You can also pick it up, so data loss prevention systems, again, can detect whether you've got the wrong kind of material on your PC, or again, detect that kind of attempts at exfiltration. But yeah, often the insider threat is going to be the most difficult to detect. But again, it comes down, in my mind, it's all to do with spotting normal from abnormal. And if someone's pattern of activity changes, or the pattern activity of on a server changes, we should be looking for that, and we should be able to pick it up, and we should be able to flag it. It may well be a false positive, but I think in many cases we'd rather have a false positive and just alert an analyst to look at it than miss a true positive and miss potentially something very expensive. Yeah. I believe so. Come and talk to us at our desk. So my role is to look at the threats and look at the data telemetry. We've got our product specialists on the desk, so come and have a chat, and we can talk about exactly what it is that we do. I guess that's it. Okay. Thank you very much.